are you?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
A little louder, Jacob. We can't hear you.
I said I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Thought we'd shoot you a bird there. Tell us about yourself.
Well, my name is Jacob. I go to Stetson Law School. I just recently had a newborn daughter. Her name is Lucia. I'm in my second year of law school.
Wow. What'd you do before law school, Jacob?
Before law school, I was in law enforcement. I worked for, I won't say where, but I worked for a sheriff's office here in Florida. And then I worked in a jail for a little bit after that at another sheriff's office.
Oh, that's fantastic. Any words of advice for a growing bird?
Eat your Wheaties. Grow big and strong.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
You got it.
All right. You ready to start, Alan? Ladies and gentlemen, you've come to the wrong program. It's not going to be very fun or insightful, but thank heaven Jacob's here to help him. If you have any questions, call me, the bird. All right. Jacob, have you ever been to the Tropical Serenade at Disney World?
I can't say that I have.
It was one of Walt Disney's favorite rides, and it's talking birds, which was a big deal in the 1960s.
Huh.
Anyway, welcome everybody. This is a presentation on succession secrets to protect your business and family in the first 30 days after an emergency. This was spurred into existence by David Finkel, my friend and business coach, and I'm going to be talking about this in Maui in 4 days. So this is my dress rehearsal, and I want to thank everyone who is attending here. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions, please go ahead and click it into the suggestion box or the questions box, and we'll make sure that we answer you. And thanks for family and friends being here. Family is very important and a big part of what happens in the first 30 days after an emergency. Think about 3 things that you'd like to get out of this talk. One may be your own game plan for when bad stuff happens or stuff that you don't expect. Second may be how you can best help your clients and others with those types of situations. Maybe somebody comes to mind particularly that you would like to help out, or maybe you should change the procedures in your office as to whether you're asking all your clients about what happens in an emergency, who are the emergency contacts. And sometimes these emergencies are caused by negligence of the organization or not understanding what a whistleblower or a governmental investigation or what have you could result from. But, you know, many of us are hopefully spending most of our mental energy on the future, making the future brighter than the past, and not being preoccupied by negative stuff and over worried about things that may happen. But on the other hand, being human beings, we can be very unreasonable. And Jacob, I'm sure when you were a sheriff, you saw people get themselves into all kinds of problems that they didn't have to get themselves into, correct?
Oh yeah, definitely. Frustration and temper will definitely take you down a dead-end street, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine you had a lot of people in the jail tell you, I wish I had done it differently.
I think all of them regretted being there, from my experience.
Right, right. So we want to be very mindful that our clients are still childish. Everyone is childish, and everyone is a little bit self-deceptive. So a big part of the whole thing here is just understanding Murphy's Law, which is Murphy's Law was if anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. And the corollary is it will happen at the worst possible time. So we just want to not have a blind eye cast. Things happen. Those of us who were there September 1st, 2001, September 11, 2001, everything shut down. You couldn't get anywhere because the airports were shut down. You couldn't find a rental car. So, and then if you were in the great blackout of Toronto, the whole northeastern seaboard blackout. I was in Toronto for that, and I only had $14 to last me 2 days. And I had to walk 11 flights of stairs up to my hotel room because the elevators weren't working. So thank heaven that the airports opened 3 days later. This stuff can happen, and I just didn't have a lot of cash, and I didn't have candles or any light at all in my hotel room. I was fumbling around. There was water, but not much to do. So what are things going to, how are these things going to be handled? So Jacob, when you went through and made these materials for me, what struck you the hardest on a personal level?
Well, what struck me the hardest is that we often ignore that reality can happen to us. That's always something to be reminded of. And that many times we set up our businesses, for example, and we don't anticipate that we're not always going to be here, or maybe we're not just in a position where we can run it anymore, and that those things need to be able to keep moving without us. My wife's parents own an HVAC company. It's a multi-million-dollar company for them, and it's just her dad running it. Her mom kind of assists. I thought about this when I was making this. If her dad had some kind of emergency, I don't know if there's anybody there who keep that thing running. And if they're relying on that for their income, if his wife is relying on that for her income, that could be really bad for her.
Right.
That's stuck out to me.
Right. And that's why when you read David Finkel's books about a business, you want to make it what he calls a level 2 business where it can run without you.
Right.
So it's great to be able to be in the business and to run the business, but it's also great to be able to go on vacation and to know the business will run without you. It's great, terribly enough to say that if you had to be in the hospital for 6 weeks, you could come back out and the business would still be open. Right?
Right. That's important.
Yeah, very important. So we find that there's four types of crises that have to be addressed when something happens like this. The first type of crisis is who can lead the organization? Who can lead the family? Who can the family trust? A lot of times you have a very strong entrepreneur, and then the spouse is really not that involved, and the spouse is the one who's going to make all the decisions if the entrepreneur disappears or can't make a decision, and the spouse doesn't really know what's going on, doesn't even really know the lawyer, doesn't really know the accountant, doesn't know the insurance agent, and is just cast into this. So the first part is leadership. And to say, well, the 4 people, they'll get together and they'll figure it out. Well, if 4 people don't have a leader, it'll be not as effective as if there is somebody appointed to be the leader. And then the second item is what was going on and what are the agreements between this company, between these people, and the other people they're functioning with. And quite frankly, a lot of very, very successful clients who appear to be very well organized run their relationships on the back of a napkin. So you can't really tell, well, John was the president of the company, he ran the company. Mark handled marketing. We're not really sure what he did or why he did it or how he got paid or why he got paid or who his loyalties were with. And then Ginger ran the accounting department, but nobody was really sure exactly how she did it. So just misunderstanding your relationships with key suppliers, your relationship with key customers, your relationship with bankers, all of that can be thrown out of alignment if there's not somebody or some people generally aware of what's going on and how to handle things. And who do they trust? Who's trustworthy? Who was trustworthy because you were there running the business and they were doing what you told them to do and they know you're watching? And how trustworthy are they once once you're not there to watch. So that's another issue. The third issue that I think people don't really appreciate is that the surviving spouse can be a terrible mess for weeks, months, years. And I think any psychologist, any mental health professional who handles trauma counseling or grief counseling can tell you that when you lose a spouse, especially a long-term spouse, under certain circumstances, that surviving spouse just is not going to be comfortable making a decision. So what you have to expect is indecision. And indecision can be very, very problematic. So a lot of times when I sit with an entrepreneur and the spouse, I say to the entrepreneur, what do we need to know about your business, running your business, and specifically, what would we do in the first week or 2 weeks after your death or incapacity? And the entrepreneur will often give me a pretty surprised look and say, well, I just haven't thought about that. That's not a good place to be. Now, sometimes the spouse will say, I can run this business so much better than he can. Just get him out of my way. I'm ready. I don't need any help. But when you counsel a married couple, or you counsel two partners who really are close friends and really do everything together, and you have this married couple, they're a class act. You've got these two partners, they're a class act, and then one person dies, or they're not getting along anymore, and then you really learn how much class they have, how their ethics are, whether these were both really nice people or whether the leader was really nice, the other one not so nice. And the other thing you learn as you practice law and accounting and advise people is when things are going well, it's a lot easier to be a class act and to say, please and thank you, and I appreciate that, and let me pay your bill. When things are going well and they're making $10 million a year, all of a sudden they have a bad year, they're losing money, they have cash flow issues, they have to sell 2 of their 6 Ferraris, and they're not even nice people anymore. So you learn all about that. So what comes to mind, Jacob, from your life as a sheriff?
About disputes like that?
About disputes like that and how families work.
Yeah.
What are you going to carry into your law practice when you're practicing law that you learned as a sheriff about people in crisis?
Well, one of the most common things I learned is that everybody has a self-interest, something that motivates them. When they're in a moment of crisis, at least when I used to have to appeal to people in crisis, finding out what it is that's motivating them and appealing to that will get people to go a long way. It'll get people to be regrounded, kind of put a perspective on things. The biggest conflict that I saw going to domestics was always about money. And one of the biggest ways I would refocus people is talking about their kids and saying, hey, maybe even if you don't think you're ever going to get along with this other guy or other girl again, at least remember that you've got 1 or 2 or 3 little ones looking up to you. And that would ground them a lot and help them think a little more clearly.
So what kind of circumstance would that be? I mean, is this a domestic violence visit, or this is an arrest, or this
not always violence. Sometimes there was violence involved, but we went to a lot of domestic disputes too that were verbal. And I remember one that I went to was at a nice neighborhood, and the couple was in the middle of separating, and then they got kind of back together, but they were still going through the divorce process, and the male half was trying to kick the female half out of the house. It was a whole big dramatic event. And the whole crux of their issue was, like I just mentioned, it was money problems. And I did that same strategy where I told her, you've got lawyers and attorneys, all that is handled on that end. But tonight, just remember, like, you have what's important, and that's your children and your well-being. And she thanked me for that, and it helped people part ways with level heads. She went back to her place, and he stayed at the house for the night.
Perfect. I've always heard that if you get into a dispute, whoever calls 911 stays in the house and the other person ends up in jail. Is that true? Whoever calls 911 first is the safest.
There might be some truth to, if you call first, you get an ear lended to you first. It's also who talks to them first. So the other person calls, but then the first officer gets there and that person talks to them. There is a reality to that, but we try to avoid that bias, and hopefully the right decision is made, not the first one. But yeah, there is some credence to, if you get your voice heard first, you might find favor.
So if you find out that your spouse got upset and called 911, you should leave that, get out of that house, because when the police get there, they're likely to arrest you.
Well, this isn't legal advice, but walking away before they call 911, that would certainly help your case, for sure. If you know they've called, though, you might want to get your word in too. So
right,
maybe stick around close by.
Maybe get a witness to come over.
Yeah, get a witness for sure. Definitely get a
neighbor
witness.
to come over.
Oh yeah, witness won't hurt.
Right. So the fourth thing I have on this slide is legal and bureaucratic issues. We had a client die in July, and almost all of their money was in a Schwab account under a limited liability company, and the client was the sole signer on that Schwab account. And I said, well, this is no problem because the LLC that owns the Schwab account is owned by his revocable trust. And his revocable trust appoints his friend to be the alternate trustee. So we'll just sign a document saying, as alternate trustee of this trust, I accept the position of trustee. I'm now the manager of the LLC, and I appoint myself as manager of the LLC. So Schwab can now allow me to sign on that account. And then I found out, and I was surprised, I'm practicing law 41 years, and there's always something new to surprise you. Schwab has a policy that says we're not going to change the signer on an LLC account when the owner of the LLC dies or the owner of his revocable trust dies, unless we have a court order.
Wow.
And I just thought, really? I'm sorry, wait a minute. It was not Schwab. It was Fidelity. I said, really? You're going to need a court order? I have to file a friendly lawsuit? But we were able to prevail upon them. It was a very large account. It was a multi-million-dollar account, and I don't think they wanted the publicity. But it's a good idea to have access to cash and to check and see who signs on various accounts so that if you have a problem, you can get through the problem. And speaking of cash, there's nothing illegal about having a couple of $1,000s of cash in your safe. It's got to be cash that you pay taxes on. But when people do need money, if the ATM machines all break down, it will be a confusing day someday. So again, who signs on accounts and who will be able to sign on accounts in the event of death or incapacity? What is your access to these accounts? And then we have a worksheet, a workbook that Jacob put together, and we'll probably find a way to get this emailed to all of you attendees.
It's also in the materials tab.
Oh, okay, so it's in the materials tab. So what you can do this afternoon, after those of you who will still be awake after this presentation, is you can go ahead and write in or type out an email. If I died today, what do people need to know about my business? Now, what David and I talked about in our podcast was, next time you're driving somewhere, open up your phone, put on the recording device, and just ramble out some instructions, and maybe once a year update them. Here's who I trust in the business. Here's what you need to do, right away if something happens to me. And a lot of this is not only the business, but it's the family members. So when we do an estate plan for a business owner, we ask, who are the people in your industry who work in your business or outside of your business that I, as your lawyer, and Margaret, as your CPA, would be able to call to say, what the heck should we do? Well, my wife can handle all that. Well, what if she is in the same accident that you're in? What if it's your children? Should it be your children? Who can we trust? Who understands the industry? And then another question is, do you recommend that the business be sold immediately because it's going to fall off the wheels and crash and burn? Do you recommend that we bring in new talent to stabilize it, to prove that it's a stable business so that someone will buy it knowing that it's not a fire sale? Do you recommend that the employees buy it? If you're already a multimillionaire, does it turn out that these employees contributed a lot more to your success than anyone in your family ever did? I know a lot of situations like that where the family members are just, they're family members. It's good. It's been very lucrative for them to have been born to the right entrepreneur, but they haven't really contributed. They may have their own issues. They have their own inheritance. What about these employees that have been there 30 years, come in every morning on time, work hard, put up with us, and then they're there when we leave? They've really built the business. Is it better to agree that they can buy it, or to set out a plan, maybe 5 times earnings, and they pay for it over 10 years? That's the type thing that you may want to think about and write down. A lot of times what David has also taught me is there's a focus, a laser focus on 5, 10, 15% of your business. 5, 10, 15% of what you're doing is really what makes it all work. The Paredes principle, 20% of the causes result in 80% of the results. So you've got to tell us what part of your business is the most important and really runs the show, so that we can immediately get rid of those distractions if we lose you. And do you know what those things are? Are you realistic? Or do you have a lot of bright, shiny objects? Because I have lost clients and I have jumped in to help businesses and have just found all these bright, shiny objects that are distractions. Everyone was being distracted by this and distracted by that and this new effort and this new sub business. And it turned out that the new advisors, after months, not weeks or days, but after months, are able to square that away and maybe make the business even more successful than it was before. Jacob, any comments on that?
Efficiency is key. That's the words I live by.
Yep. So the next question is, do you need life insurance? And the answer is, if you can tell me when you're going to die and what your assets will be on your date of death, then I can tell you how much life insurance you need and what kind of life insurance to buy. But none of us really know that. Erring on the side of caution and having a little bit more term life insurance than you think you should have is rarely a bad idea. It's certainly something to consider. And it can be very inexpensive. For example, a 10-year term life insurance policy will, and I can show you some numbers on our Estate View software towards the end of this, it can be pretty inexpensive because the carrier's only on the hook for 10 years. After the 10th year, it becomes egregiously expensive, but it covers you for those 10 years. So if you're 40 and by the time you're 50, your children should be done with college and you should have enough for retirement, a 10 or 15-year term policy is not a bad idea. Another situation that may happen is I represent a brain surgeon. Brain surgeons get sued 2 to 3 times a year if they're good and active. They just get sued a lot. What am I going to do for the creditor protection of that brain surgeon if his spouse dies before him? And if they own all their assets jointly as tenants by the entireties for creditor protection purposes, then when that spouse dies, that neurosurgeon is going to have no creditor protection or not good creditor protection. And by the way, may go remarry and lose the family fortune to the next family. So that's where the inactive spouse maybe put a $3 to $5 million life insurance policy on that spouse, payable to an irrevocable trust that can benefit the neurosurgeon without being subject to his creditor claims, without being subject to federal estate tax, without being subject to divorce claims. He would have a fiduciary duty to properly manage it, but it would not be for his next family or for the creditor types of claims. So I would definitely think about the liquidity from life insurance. The other thing is when that entrepreneur dies. So, maybe it's a business worth $10 million and it pays $1 million a year of income to the family. Maybe the family already has $20 million. And if they lost the whole business, they still wouldn't miss a meal. But it still would hurt. It would still hurt. And if you lose the main entrepreneur, there's a good chance you're going to have a loss in value. So just having that extra $5 million of life insurance, it gives the surviving spouse, it gives the family, it gives the advisors more breathing room. I personally am not a big fan of permanent life insurance, but for young and healthy people, term life insurance can make a lot of sense. Now, there is also a form of term life insurance called private placement life, where if you want income tax avoidance, you could place appreciating high income assets, even including a business, in a life insurance wrapper that has a death benefit. And then you don't have to pay income tax on the income that accumulates within that policy. You can borrow the money out tax-free. And as long as it's still intact when you die and the cash value goes into the policy, your family does not have to pay capital gains tax selling appreciated assets when you die. So for some of our wealthy clients, that's worth considering. But think carefully. Jacob, do you have any idea? You have a wife and children. Have you thought through on your death how much they should be able to spend each year? How much, whether you have enough life insurance to fund what they would need for spending?
No, honestly, I haven't given it serious thought before doing all this, and we do have savings, and fortunately, what we budgeted for was an emergency fund. So she has cash available, and then she has extra savings currently available, and that has been our disaster plan, if you will. We don't have a lot of expenditures to cover, so that should protect her for at least a little bit of time.
Right. The rule of thumb has generally been 4%. So if you died and left a $2 million life policy and she invested it prudently and spent 4% a year, which would be $80,000 a year on $2 million, then it would, based on the history of the American economic system in the last 70 years, it would last her lifetime.
Oh, well.
So now the Wall Street Journal recently issued an article, I think about 4 months ago, where some studies have shown that really should be 3.75% and not 4%. And, the stock market's been so healthy lately, these 15 and 20% per year rates of return. People who are new to finance and just starting to look at these rates of return, and maybe some optimists are saying, oh, well, it's always going to go up by 10 or 15%. It can't. It can't do that. So a 4%, a 7% rate of return minus a 3% inflation rate would give you a 4% spending allowance. Some advisors say, hope for 6%, but be able to live on 3%. So if you left $4 million, be able to live on $120,000 a year, but enjoy luxuries at $240,000 a year. The big issue, though, for so many of us is the medical insurance issue. We are able to afford medical insurance because we have a company and a group medical insurance plan, but you die, your spouse doesn't want to work, she wants to raise the children. It looks like they're dismantling what they used to call the Affordable Care Act. So having extra money for medical attention is certainly important. So how much time and energy, Jacob, do you think someone should spend on putting together an emergency manual? Do you think an hour, 3 hours?
Well, I think even 2 or 3 hours could save you years and years of headache and a lot of money. I know you have an adage that's at the end of this PowerPoint, where if you make a certain amount of money and your company's at a high value, several $1 million, even a small percent can be a few $100,000 an hour you're saving.
Right.
So I think it's a good investment to spend to however much time really it takes to be thorough, but 3-4 hours, I think that'd be doable.
Right. Now, when the key entrepreneur or a key professional dies, or somebody, maybe there's a fight, somebody leaves a company, the best policy is just to reach out to the customers, reach out to the staff, reach out to everybody, and be very candid. We're really sorry that this happened. We're very sad. We're going to do the very best we can to recover from this loss and to handle this situation. Don't stick your head in the sand and go silent. That's the best way. Sorry, my phone's making a little noise there. The best way to really upset your customer base, to really upset your suppliers, to really upset your employees is to go dark. It's better to go out, and people will empathize with somebody. I've seen situations where a one-man medical practice, the doctor died, and they couldn't find a replacement for 4 to 6 weeks. And the wife and the daughter called all the patients and said, listen, we're going to find another fantastic cardiologist who's going to be every bit as good and as dedicated and as caring as my husband and my father was. But just give us some time. And in the meantime, they found other people in the community to come in and help with the practice. And from calling all those patients, normally all those patients would have fled. The referral sources would have sent all those patients somewhere else. But because the mother and the daughter knew to make those phone calls, the daughter was a business consultant, and she really cared deeply about the father's practice, as he did. So that was almost a miracle that they did very well financially from it. A nice cardiologist who was looking for a practice showed up, and patients who were really used to being treated like a concierge doctor should treat them were able to continue. But it sure would have been better if that physician client had thought this through before he died. And one thing that some physician clients do, some lawyers do, some accountants do, is they just have an informal agreement. Hey, there's 4 of us. We're the best guys in town or best ladies in town. If something happens to one of us, the others are going to step in. We're all friends. If something happens to John, Mary and Joseph will step in. They'll help make sure the practice keeps running, give the spouse and the family time to replace, as opposed to eating your competitors alive, which is not, necessarily a positive thing to do. So having a standby agreement with another professional that if you became incapacitated or you died, that professional would come into your practice, keep 100% of the profits, but keep the practice and their own practice going, that could be a very nice thing to do. And when there is a death or there is an incapacity in a small city, it's nice to see all of the professionals chip in and help the person who got lost. It's nice to see a competitor call a lifelong competitor and say, look, I'm going to help you. I'm going to take care of your customers without taking your customers over, because this is the right thing to do. So to the extent that you can put those types of arrangements together for your clients or yourselves, that is important. So, Jacob, when was the last time you took a long vacation?
I couldn't say now. It's probably been years.
All right. What do you think is going to happen in this office when I'm in Maui next week? a lot of mass confusion.
Oh, a lot of phone calls to Maui. That's probably going to happen.
Right. I have not done as good a job as David has coached me to do to make this place run without me. I am not what they call the level 2 business that runs itself. But I'm very thankful to have two amazing partners who, quite frankly, practice law better than I do and are smarter than I am, and they're better writers, and uh, they take great care of my clients. I'm thankful to have that, but it would be nice if I was a better delegator. When I come back next week from a week in Maui, I'll know more about how our staff works and doesn't work to see how things went uh, when I was away. So the longer the vacations, the better the business or the practice will go if I can have everybody do all their own stuff. But I also know from experience, I used to leave two partners in charge and they would be co-managers when I would be gone for a couple of weeks. It became much better to flip a coin and just have one person in charge. One person in charge, even with the mistakes, consulting with the other person is a lot better than having co-owners or co-managers in most situations. Now, one thing, the first thing I often ask a client, a business client, is, do you have non-competes? And the answer varies between I don't know, or yes, or no, or some of them. Well, when you die or become incapacitated, the non-compete becomes the most important asset of your business. It's more important than the money, it's more important than the equipment, it's more important than the business location. Because if they can walk out of your business and take all your customers and take all your employees, your ship can sink. So we really want to make sure that you have non-solicits, non-competes. When it's time to give a big bonus, if you don't have a non-compete, you want to go ahead and get one. If you're in California or I believe Washington State where you can't enforce a non-compete, you may consider making that person a part owner of the business so that the non-compete can be enforceable. But also the ownership of intellectual property, confidentiality clauses, making sure that you control your website and your phone number, making sure that you have a copy of the employment agreement that has the non-compete in it, that you didn't lose your copy of that agreement. That's all really important stuff, and things that are regularly messed up when we have to walk into a business in a last minute uh, situation. Any comments on that, Jacob?
I think that's important. You want to cover all your bases, and with non-competes, I mean, that really protects you from people who are kind of taking advantage of a situation and utilizing the opportunity maybe you gave them to move on to something else and leave your company hanging when you're gone.
That's right. That's right. Also, being fair to people and making sure that they're fair to you. And this may be something that you do need to delegate to someone, but have you thought through, is every employee, are they holding grudges because you kind of push them around a little bit? Or are they feeling good about their relationship with you? And the best employees, studies show the best employees do not have money as their primary factor. Maybe in sales they do, they tend to be more carnivorous, but your most loyal employees, your best employees, when you look at the surveys, they want to know that they're appreciated. They want to feel that the day goes fast because they're doing work that's well suited for them. They want to know that they are learning and getting better at what they're doing. They want to know that they have a good friend in the office. Usually most everybody has a best friend in the office. And are you doing that for them? And are you meeting with them every 6 months or a year to say, hey, Polly, you're doing a great job. Thank you very much. I wish you would be on time more often. I've got a bonus here for you. It would be a little bit more if you could get here on time more often. Um, oh, you forgot to sign the non-compete thing. Would you mind signing it? And I'm so glad to help your seventh grade son's class by donating to their fundraising walk. So think about that, because when you come into crisis, that makes a difference to clients. If they like the spouse of the business owner, if they feel that they're a team all together, that's something that's important today and also important in a crisis. So then again, the legal paperwork, you can go to page 11 of the workshop. Who should be my successor in the business? Who should be my successor in the charity that I run? What should be done with my collector cars? All the things that someone would need to worry about and would need to know about, you want to tell them about it, where to get cash, where to get other information. You may have powers of appointment. I'm sorry, powers, power, I'm sorry. You may have a durable power of appointment where a power of attorney, I'm sorry, a durable power of attorney, where it says that Marcia can sign my name if I'm incapacitated. Well, one, does she have to prove I'm incapacitated? That could take a day or two. So hopefully you don't have a springing power. Hopefully it's live when you sign it. But secondly, if I die, it dies with me. So don't forget the durable power of attorney dies when you die. And my will may say that on my death, my assets go to a trust, but they have to be probated to the trust. And probate takes, how long does probate take? A long darn time. We just had a probate. I needed to get a personal representative appointed, and the previous law firm, I had not gotten the will from the previous law firm. The client came in, I had a copy of her will. I did a codicil to update her will. I did not replace her will. She died. I needed the original will from the prior law firm. They couldn't find it for 4 weeks. So then, in order to get a probate going, I would have had to give notice to people who weren't even beneficiaries anymore, and they would have thought that something was up. So it just basically took us 4 weeks to get the prior law firm to find the will, and it held things up. If the accounts had been in a revocable trust, we wouldn't have had to go through that. So it did inconvenience things, and I'm going to do all new wills nowadays and not do codicils if I don't have the original of the will, because of the extra hoops you have to jump through if you don't have the original. And that's why our law firm, we keep everybody's originals if they'll let us, because then I know where they are. They're in our nice big vault system. I don't have to wait for somebody to go through grandpa's house to see what the heck he did with his will. And by the way, did you know that under the law, Jacob, if a will is missing, there may be a presumption that the person tore it up and destroyed it. And if they tore it up and destroyed it, then it's no good anymore.
That's right, the lost will theory there.
Yeah. So where are those valuable agreements? The originals have meaning. I mean, we live in an electronic world, but the original of a will and a trust have meaning. The original of a deed has a meaning, because if you take an original deed that you recorded in the courthouse and it has a mistake, you can re-record it with X's over it, and that's called a repaired deed. And you can't do that unless you have the original. So some of the original documents do need to be out there. Page 20, do you know what your business is worth? Have you given your family an idea of what they might expect to sell it for, so that they don't have unrealistic expectations or too low of expectations? I mean, a lot of people, every family farmer thinks that their farm's going to become a shopping center. I remember that from agricultural law. And a lot of us have inflated views of what our businesses are worth. It's just not a bad idea to get a valuation of what the business is worth. If you think in the next 5 years you may want to sell the business, it would not be a bad idea to interview business brokers. They're also called investment bankers. Get their tips on what you might want to do to dress it up for sale. And then in the event of a terrible situation, your family is better off going ahead and knowing who you would have dealt with and what you would have done. That will be handled. Family dynamics after death. There's a saying that you really don't know someone until you've shared an inheritance with them. I would estimate that 1 out of 10 of our estate and trust matters turns into something that's somewhat unpleasant. I will say that 90% of the time, everybody's pretty pleasant, especially if you try to resolve it. Try to resolve that estate or trust as quickly as you can. People go to the funeral. They usually are not fighting at the funeral yet. Then they come back from the funeral. Here's what Dad wanted. Let's get it done before somebody comes off the wheels. But clarity in your documents is really important. And it's nice to have things thought through, but maybe not overly thought through. We'll have clients that give me a 7-page list. I want this Corvette to go to John and that Corvette to go to Mary. And I want my property on Main Street to go to Curtis for life and then remainder to Rebecca, because Curtis is going to run it for the rest of his life. And I want the mansion in the mountains to go into the Mansion in the Mountains Trust. Well, what happens if they sell one of those assets? Then where does it go? So those types of provisions, he gets that, she gets that, he gets that, she gets that. I try to say, nope, let's not do that. Just tell me that you would prefer for them to get those things, but give me a percentage breakdown, and then we're going to figure it out. And who's going to value those things? If I get the shopping center and my sister gets the business, and then we split up the rest, pro rata the value, who's going to value it? So is it going to be the longtime CPA is going to pick a valuation person? If you appoint your son as the trustee, and it's up to him to value what he gets and what his sister gets, what are the chances that your son and daughter are going to be speaking to each other 5 years, 10 years, 20 years after that? You're setting up a fight. I think in old Europe, they would put 2 cats in a big burlap bag and then shake the bag up, and then they would bet on which cat would survive. Do you want to do that to your children by having one child in charge? I had a situation about 25 years ago where the son in charge of a multi-million-dollar business bought a helicopter and a ranch area and was hunting deer from the helicopter. And the business was paying for all this. And his sisters were quite irate to find that he spent $5 million so that he could hunt deer from a helicopter with a private helicopter pilot. I mean, was that good use? Do you think that family's getting along well now? It's not. People don't realize that, 2 children, they'll typically get along. 3 children, they'll typically get along. 2 children, both married, will all 4 of those people get along? Not always. 6 of them, 8 of them, 12 of them, throw them in a bag and shake it up. That's not the best choice. So you want to think through if your daughter's helping you in the business and running the business, and your son is out there doing something else, I think it's perfectly fine to leave that business to the daughter and leave other assets to the son, but maybe put somebody else in charge of things for a while so that the son doesn't blame the daughter doesn't blame the son. Let everyone blame the trust company. Let everyone blame the lawyer. But think it through carefully, and if it has to do with values, go ahead and put in the document or put in a side letter what you think the value should be so that your children are not going to fight about that value. And if you're on a second marriage or a third marriage with children by a prior marriage, do not expect them to get along. You just can't expect that. It's just not what happens. You have to be realistic. In the event of an emergency, the first 30 days, they'll all stick around. After that, the litigation lawyers show up in droves, right? Jacob, do you know why they call it a multiple party litigation? Do you know where that comes from?
No, Alan, where does that come from?
It's because the lawyers are having multiple parties to celebrate the litigation.
They win no matter what.
They win. The lawyers win no matter what. So we like to keep the lawyers to a minimum. One idea for keeping the lawyers to a minimum is to have arbitration clauses instead of open court clauses, because quite candidly, litigation lawyers hate arbitration because it's not as free. The three arbitrators tell litigation lawyers what to do instead of litigation lawyers telling a judge what to do. The arbitrators don't run for re-election and need the support of the lawyers. And the arbitration costs a fortune because the three arbitrators are now charging as well. But don't assume harmony. If you have three partners in a business and one partner dies, don't assume that the other partners are going to get along beautifully and just hand a check over to the family. We see situations where one person dies, the other partner says, I know that the buy-sell says that I'm supposed to give his family $1 million, but he was such a pain in the last 3 years. He cost us $2 million in business in making bad decisions. So I am not giving the family any money. You go ahead and sue me. So that's where you want the buy-sell agreement to be what's called a trustee buy-sell agreement, where when I die, my partner doesn't get the $2 million. The trust company gets the $2 million. And then they are instructed to give that $2 million to my family when my family gives the stock. And my grieving ex-partner, who's not grieving for me, he's grieving for all the mistakes I made before I died. He's not going to get his hands on that $2 million and not give it to my family. Isn't this great, Jacob?
It's good. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, it's good stuff. All right. So then there's going to be financial decisions to be determined. I've ranted and raved and covered a lot of these things. Leadership succession. Then the major risks. What are these risks? Let's not forget the things that we're talking about. There's accidents. And one big risk that we see 3 to 4 times a year in our practice because of the type of law we perform is that a car accident or a truck accident causes potential loss of an entire business. So what you want to do now to protect that is to have as few cars and trucks in your business as possible. Hire some other company to do all the driving. Send your employees out in an Uber. Uber delivers now. You don't have to send your employees to deliver. But also have a lot of debt against the business. If I have a $5 million business that owes the bank $4 million, then the plaintiff lawyer only gets $1 million, and I still have my business and I still have the money I borrowed from the bank off to the side, versus having to buy a whole $5 million business out of bankruptcy because of a car accident. So I could have that business owe me $4 million, and then I only have to pay $1 million to the plaintiff when a car hurts somebody. Another thing that wrecks a business is when the U.S. government walks in and shuts it. And we've seen that happen. I've had the FBI go into doctors' offices and arrest the doctor in the reception area, put handcuffs on him, and take him to the police station because he was having financial relationships with criminals who then ratted on him even though he didn't do anything wrong. I've had that happen 4 times. I've had the FBI go into small insurance companies and just shut it down, seize all the computers because they heard something bad was happening. Sometimes something bad happens, sometimes it doesn't. They're still going to do their job as law enforcement. I've had banks come in and shut down businesses because they just freeze all the accounts because of a default. So that's why it's a good idea to have a 10-day correction period in your bank loan document, so the bank just can't take your accounts, which they are able to do. I've had clients with employees who go and file whistleblower actions with the federal government. The next thing you know, federal prosecutors are working on a whistleblower action. I had a client write a $9 million check to settle a whistleblower case, and that client still doesn't believe that he should have written a check for a single dollar, but he had an unhappy employee, and he had a somewhat flippant attitude about compliance with law. He had a couple of emails saying, I don't care what the damn law says, we're going forward. So then it was a little bit of a gray area as to whether he should have had a certain permit or not. It wasn't clear, but he had that email, I don't give a damn what the law is, we're going forward. The employee took that to the prosecutors, and $9 million paid to the great United States of America. He's still bitter about that. And then divorce happens too. Be nice to your spouse. I find that a lot of divorces are situations where the people were just not being nice to each other. That made the divorce a lot tougher. You know, that old saying, hold your loved ones close and your enemies closer. If you hate your spouse, be nice to them to get yourself out of the marriage if that's where you're going. But, you know, sometimes a spouse feels insecure and the divorce lawyer files an emergency action and all the cash is locked up because the judge was concerned that you might flee the country. You want to keep all your cards on the table. And again, Jacob, you have a lot more experience with marital issues because they became explosive when you were a sheriff. Any words of wisdom for those of us who have been married for 41 years, but our spouse still gets angry with us every once in a while?
You know, honestly, I think somebody who's been married for 41 years has way more experience than I did as a cop. But for me going to calls is just, you know, take 10 seconds and take a deep breath. And the people who are closest to us know how to push our buttons the most efficiently. So that's when you got to be the most ready to take a step away from a situation and don't let something escalate.
That's right. So then there's also insurance. Do you have all the right insurances? Do you have business interruption insurance? When the floods came through, a lot of clients did not have insurance. They were lucky to get little FEMA checks. A lot of clients had good insurance, but that business interruption insurance, it's not cheap. But if your business has to shut down, having an insurance company cut a check is a nice thing. There used to be a book there is a book by a comic named Alan King, and the name of the book is Anyone Who Owns His Own House Deserves It. It's a pretty funny book about home ownership. But he tells a story about how he had fire and theft insurance, and there was a fire, and the insurance carrier said, but we only cover it if there's a theft during the fire. So that's not that didn't really happen, I hope. But you have to be very careful with your insurance because in every city of the United States, even today on Saturday, I can guarantee you there are 10 lawyers in every large city of the United States. And what are they working on? They're working on insurance coverage litigation. Will the policy cover this or not? And then they sue the insurance agency that wrote the policy. So take a tape recorder with you, take your insurance agent for a walk in your business, walk everywhere, explain everything that could go wrong, and politely say, I'm covered for all this, right? Is there anything else I need? Do I have everything I need? So that your cause of action is going to be against the insurance agency, unfortunately. Another thing is directors and officers liability insurance, Jacob. Sometimes something happens in a business and the insurance won't cover it, but then the directors and officers liability insurance will cover it because the plaintiff will sue the officers and directors for allowing the thing to happen. And then that'll cover things that the other insurance doesn't cover. And that includes mold. Mold, a lot of people don't have insurance for mold, apartment house owners, but the directors and officers policy will cover mold. So just a word for the wise there. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of stuff here. I want to just end with personal ethics. We have just found that clients who do things right, who care about being honest, who care about their customers, who care about their employees, have the most financial success and have the fewest bad surprises. So it's always a good idea. Honesty is still, in my opinion, in 2025, the very best policy. Judges don't like deceptive conduct. It just doesn't work to take dangerous or insincere shortcuts, and that includes situations with the law as well. So that's our program. Now I just want to show off my estate view software for a couple of minutes, but we do welcome everybody's questions, comments, and suggestions. Oh, I've got 6 questions. Who is David, the advisor that Alan keeps referring to? Okay, that's David Finkel, Finkel. David has a company called Maui Mastermind, which coaches family businesses. They have about 120 family businesses that they coach. And I'm one of their clients, and they just do a fantastic job holding me as accountable as they can. The problem is that the ACA is not affordable. Its premiums have increased many times. Yep, I'm sure the ACA is not as good as it would have been. Why am I not a fan of permanent life insurance? I've just found that a lot of clients don't really understand it, and that the rates of return on it have not been as high as what the clients have wanted or have expected. Well, I'm not a disfan of it, but let me see. The next question. I think, sorry, I'm a little bit disoriented by this format. I guess that's all the questions I have.
I see one from Bonnie. It says, I'm not a big podcast listener, but Alan mentioned his podcast. I'd love to have more information about accessing this podcast.
Right. I'll get you all. I'll find out from David Finkel where it is. Maybe it's on his website. Let's go to his website, Maui Mastermind. Business coaching. By the way, David has a program in Orlando in February that I'll be speaking at. If you're a business owner and you'd like to attend, let us know. I don't see his podcast here. There it is. Watch the latest episode here. So I would click there, and there it is, and I'll be there somewhere. But he has got a lot of podcasts. David is a very analytic person. So there's always a lot of good information under podcast.mauimastermind.com. Okay, now I'm going to go to stateview.link, and I'm a subscriber. If anyone wants a temporary subscription, just let me know. And then, the authenticator's working. So it's going to send me an authenticator app here. 735-612. All right, I'm verified. And then what I want to know is what life insurance will cost. So I've got a life insurance estimator here, and I can put in somebody's age, 58, death benefit, $2 million, and a 10-year term policy. If they're in standard medical condition, $7,000 a year. 20-year policy, $9,300 a year. A guaranteed universal life policy where they would pay $26,000 a year for life and get $2 million. That's not a bad deal, is it? That sounds like a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
Okay, so I could be a fan of guaranteed universal life. For universal life, where it builds a cash value, $46,000 a year. So that's the life insurance estimator. Now let's go to life expectancy. How long can you expect to live? I've got a life expectancy calculator. And this is all Americans, smokers and non-smokers, male and female. So I go one life, and the person is 65 years old, 64 years old, and the life expectancy, half of the 64-year-olds living today will still be living 19.8 years from now. Half of them will be deceased. So that's the mean age is 19.8. Now, if there's two 64-year-olds, I'll go back and let me go back there to my inputs, because I want to have two people. So here, two people, both age 64. And now life expectancy 25 years. So when you have one 64-year-old, if I took 1,000 couples, both age 64, one member of that couple will be married, still be alive in 25 years. So do I base my estate planning and my retirement planning on 19 years or 25 years? Probably 30 years. And this life expectancy table that I'm using is based on the average American. Now let's go to real life expectancy. So I go home and I go to Instant Plan, and I'll go to Alan and Marcia Gassman, open client. There's Alan, and we'll say that I'm age 55, which happened about 12 years ago, and I'm a non-smoker male. So my life expectancy is 28 years. And then I can go to Marcia, and she's been 55 a few years now. I'll even put her back to 54, 53, and her life expectancy is 33 years as a female, and our joint life expectancy is 39 years. So one of us will be alive in 39 years, and probably longer if we are non-smokers, if we don't drink too much, and if we see doctors commonly. But if I'm a smoker, if she's a smoker, that takes you lose years as soon as you smoke a cigarette. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So then I can fill in my family information. We can have some children if we want, or divest ourselves of children if we want. And then how much do you save? So this can be interesting as far as if I save $200,000 a year more than I earn until I'm 71, and then I spend $200,000 a year more than I earn when I get to be 71. And then we can put in what Marcia's financial situation would be after my death. And then we can put in a home, a $2 million home, and we can put in a mortgage on the home if we have one. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. Then we can have a vacation home. Who owns it? And then a mortgage on the vacation home. Maybe, maybe not. Then I've got $4.3 million in an IRA, growing at 7%, 60% bonds, 60% stocks, 30% bonds. And then Marcia's got an IRA. And then our other investments outside of the IRA, we could enumerate a few things that we have. Now I could simplify this, by the way. I'll go to, but I don't have to. So then the next question is, and I'll bring down the investments to 6 million. All right. Then would I leave things to charity to avoid estate tax? I might. And then here I click on life insurance, and do I want to put in the information on my life insurance, and do I want to add a life insurance policy? So for someone my age, if I want a 10-year term preferred, there's what it would cost per million. 30 years, universal life, guaranteed life. So I may want to see that policy. Like if you're going to do this, Jacob, you're going to want to add a couple million of term life insurance and just work a couple of extra hours a week
Right.
at our law firm to pay for it.
Exactly.
Right.
Good investment.
I wish I had a license that I could be the one to sell it to you. But anyway, there's 2 million of term that we've added. All right. So then also we can go through and ask the client, do you have umbrella liability insurance? Do you know what your coverage is? Do you have malpractice insurance? Do you have car insurance? To make sure that they have it. And then the other thing you have to look forward to is college funding.
Oh boy.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So let me go back here. Let me give you a child. That'll be good to have. So child one. I'll give you child one.
Nice.
And now you have a child. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So then when I go to college funding, well, I don't know why college funding isn't working today, but it's not. All right, then I have optional questions. So these have to do with the emergencies. So we can put these in slides for Maui.
Okay.
So do you know how much cash I need to settle my estate? Are there banks or lenders that are going to call loans if I die? Do I know if there's enough life insurance? Do I know how much cash my beneficiaries need for the first 24 months after my death? Have I factored in income taxes? Et cetera, et cetera. A lot of nice things there. So then I click on results. And once I click on results, I can go to a number of places. But one place I can go is to the retirement calculator. So this is going to tell me that I need an extra 5 million at retirement to get where I'm going. And based upon what I've told it I want to be able to retire on, I'm in good shape. But not everyone's in good shape. So that's one thing to check, not only for yourself, but for your client's children. Is the inheritance that your client leaving going to be sufficient for the children? So the other risk I can explain is the estate tax risk. So based upon the information I gave, we have about a $20 million net worth, and there's a $30 million estate tax exemption, but we're saving $200,000 a year, and we've said that my legal practice will be worth $4.3 million in a while. So with the time value of money, if we live to year 39, the estate, when I die in 29 years, will be 81 million. And when Marcia dies in 39 years, the estate will be 63 million. Well, I'm sorry, it'll be much larger than that. It'll be 140 million. The estate tax 25 million. So if we fund a credit shelter trust, it goes down a little bit. If we fund qualified personal residence trusts, it goes down a little bit. If we do annual gifting, then we'll have no estate tax. So it's good to know that. And then, and this is where I think it's really good for a layman to use this. I go to export both, click on that. I'll choose an array that shows us with revocable trusts. And now I have a planning chart. And the planning chart, open, yeah, there it is. The planning chart summarizes our information so that we know what we have. And this shows me my required minimum distributions from my IRA when I reach 73. And it also shows me how much I can save in income taxes by letting my IRA payments go to charity. That can save $1.3 million in income taxes. This adds up the value of my assets into a little financial report, summarizes all my contact information, summarizes my insurance information, summarizes all my companies that I told the form about, summarizes our joint assets, and gives me my contact information, and then gives me a red flag report. And the red flag report says, you're going to inherit from your dad. Doesn't he need a trust to protect your inheritance? You're going to be supporting your mom. Do you need to get her to see a Medicaid lawyer? Your dog is a terrier. Do you realize your umbrella policy probably doesn't cover liability for a dangerous dog like a terrier? Your boat is 20, your wave runners are probably not covered by your umbrella, nor would a 22-foot boat. You've got a silencer. You shouldn't be using the silencer anywhere near marijuana, or it's a federal offense. And you can't let anyone but you use your silencer unless you have a gun trust that they're a trustee of. You've got property outside of Florida. When you have property in 2 separate states, you may need 2 separate umbrellas. Most people don't know that or realize it. And your life insurance is not in a life insurance trust, so you may end up paying estate tax. So Jacob, during the semester, we need to add more red flags to that analysis. So so that's another thing that State View does. I'll just show you 2 other things. I'll go to the home page, and I'll go to the Nest Retirement Calculator, and I'll click on Pro. And what I can do here is I can put my age, my spouse's age, a projected year of death, and then what year would I like to retire? How much would I like to be able to spend in retirement? And real importantly, what do I want to leave my children when I die? And do I want to be inflation adjusted? What's my inflation rate? What's my home worth today? What are my investments worth today? And real importantly, in yellow there, what am I able to save a year? What am I saving a year? And then will I get an inheritance? I can add expected inheritances. I can also add that I'll be getting Social Security in 25 years. And then how much debt am I in? And then what's that wedding going to cost me? And big wedding or little wedding? What's that bar mitzvah going to cost me? I can add different expenses. I'm going to have to support my mother, for example. So you just add that in. Support mother. That'll be a long time. So maybe that'll cost me $40,000 a year or $4,000 a year. I got a low maintenance mother, hopefully. All right. So, and then reoccurring expenses. So then I click on results, and what I have is a really nice spreadsheet. I click on fit with. So this spreadsheet shows me my beginning investments, my debt, my annual debt payments, my expenses, including the debt, and then my end investments, my home value, my net worth, and oops, let me open that up. And how much life insurance I need today in case I die to replace me as the wage earner. And across the top, so that's the spreadsheet. Now the spreadsheet has a lot of hidden columns. So I can go ahead and show all the columns, which would include the columns for the wedding, the column for the bar mitzvah, the column for college for your children. And across the top, and by the way, I can open this spreadsheet up. I can export the spreadsheet to Excel. And then across the top, where am I? Oops, I can't retire. I'm 4,500,000 short at the time of retirement. So I would need an extra 1,800,000, or I would need to save another 96,000 a year. So what I can do now is I can try a different model, click on duplicate. Now, you see number one is where I'm at today. Number two is the same exact thing, but what's going to change? Well, maybe I'll be willing to live on 125,000 a year when I retire. So I'll change 175 to 125, and maybe I'll be able to save 210 a year. We'll cut back on some expenses. So I just changed my savings from 180 to 210, and now I am almost there. I'm still a little short. My annual savings deficit of 26,000, retirement age 62. Well, maybe I'll work an extra couple of years. So I'll come back up here to, let's see, age of retirement. That said 60. Let's click that up to 62, and that makes it. So if I can work till 62, then I can make my retirement goal if I can save 210,000 a year. So that's nest number two. But this family may have other issues. They may want to get a bigger home. So for number three, I could show what would happen if I bought a bigger home and had more debt, and how many more years would I have to until I retire. So this is a nice little tool that anyone can use to figure out where they are from a retirement standpoint. We have a lot of other calculators, but I'm going to go now to AI. So with AI, I click on AI, and I want to create a new AI search. So I can choose Google or OpenAI, and this is within the Amazon cloud. It's securitized. So Google and OpenAI will not learn from what my searches are. They will stay confidential. And then I can have it review a tax return and tell me about the tax return. It can review a financial account statement. It can review an investment account statement. It can review a life insurance proposal. It can review a life insurance policy. It can review a trust agreement. It can amend a trust agreement. But what I wanted to show here is a public record search. So one of my good friends is Marty Shankman. And Marty is approximately age 68, I think. And he is a lawyer. And he is in New Jersey. So I'd like to know about Marty. And this is good for people you're dealing with. So now it will give me all these things, but just to save a little bit of time, what I would like to know is Marty's basic profile, his professional licenses, and his social media presence, his court records, and adverse findings. So I click on run this, and it tells me immediately highly respected, prolific author, and has an MBA, has a JD, has a CPA certificate, or at least at one point he had a CPA certificate. And then it says, is this the right guy? Because sometimes it picks the wrong person. So yeah, it's the right guy. So I click on that. Now, on the right-hand side, you see what processing. And in the middle, you see that it's working. And at the bottom of the search, as you can see here, it's going to show me 4 buttons. The first button at the bottom of the search is review with other AI. So right now I'm using Google Genesis, But when I'm done, I can have it reviewed by OpenAI for hallucinations and problems. Also, if I want a shorter response, it will simplify my response. Or if I want it to regenerate after conferring with OpenAI, then it will regenerate after conferring with OpenAI. Or I can ask it a question like, please prepare a CV for Marty and a letter to the Academy for Estate Planners recommending that he join the board. Let's see what it does. Click there. So now it's preparing a CV for Marty Shinkman and a letter to the Academy for Estate Planners recommending that he join the board. Now, you never know exactly what you're going to get, but you usually get a pretty good thing. That's not a bad CV, considering, right? And look at this letter. It writes pretty eloquently. It's with immense pleasure and unwavering confidence, and I recommend Mr. Marty Shinkman for a position on the board of directors of the Academy of Estate Planners. It even corrected my spelling of the Academy of Estate Planners. Isn't that nice? Yeah, does a nice job. So my choices here is I can, it's interesting when you click on review with the other AI, I can review it with OpenAI, and then it can be very critical. It can be kind of snotty about it. But it gives you the strengths and weaknesses and talks about it. And this is really good when you're reviewing a legal document. You can review a legal document with Genesis, and then Genesis, by the way, is Google's AI. So there it is on the final assessment. Now I'll do one more thing here. So we still have most of the viewers are still here. I'll go back to AI again. And now I will start a new search. So I go to the top left there, click on new search, and I prefer to use Google Gemini. It's faster, seems a little smarter to me. And now I'll go to a trust or estate document, and I'll choose Florida. And I can take a Word document or a PDF and drag it into there, or I can use a sample. So I'll use the sample. And then it will go ahead and give me a summary. I'll choose client summary and drafting recommendations. So I'll click on that. Now it's chunking the document. In order to maintain the secrecy, it can't sail this document into Genesis. So Genesis is having to look at the document a piece at a time after it's sterilized by the Amazon cloud. It's really interesting how all this works to make this a confidential document. But here comes my client-friendly memo. If you click on all these, you get about 50 pages of analysis, which you can then skim through. And it talks about the different types of provisions that I've asked the AI to make sure to cover. So this is my personal checklist. I went through some other checklists and decided what I thought was most important for when I reviews my documents. Now it's working on the drafting recommendations, and that may take a minute or two because it's re-chunking. But here it does a nice job of criticizing a pretty good document and explaining what it thinks the document should have that it doesn't have. So that's coming along.
That's very thorough too.
It's very, very thorough. It's beyond thorough. So while it's doing that, I can click on amend trust, and I can say, I want to add a scrivener protector provision. I want to add our trust protector provision, and I want to modify to provide that any beneficiary living in Egypt cannot inherit unless they move to a country that does not tax inheritances. Okay, so then I'll click on Generate Amendments. And now it's going through the trust agreement again, and it's creating an amendment to the trust agreement. I don't expect Estate-View to ever draft trusts because I don't want to compete with my friends who have software that draft trusts. Although some of our forms are going to be offered on the Interactive Legal platform in a few weeks or months. But anyway, there's the amendment. And there it's added my favorite trust protector provision. And any of our subscribers can put in their favorite one. And then it's going to add a scrivener protector provision. Then it's going to add that eject clause. And certainly saves a lot of secretary time. And we, quite frankly, we find that it's more accurate than some or all of our secretaries. So let me see. So this is the residency clause that had to do with and it's a pretty intricate clause. It didn't just say, hey, if you live in Egypt, you can't inherit. It actually added a word, restricted jurisdiction, no inheritance tax jurisdiction, determination of whether it constitutes will be made by the trustee sole and absolute discretion. If a beneficiary subject to this dies while a resident, then such beneficiary fails to file to establish residency in a no inheritance trust within 5 years from the date. I mean, it took some initiative there and did a fairly good job. And now I can have ChatGPT review the trust amendment and tell me how it did. And then after that, I can have it regenerate. So reasonable familiarity. Material weaknesses in this draft. We'll go back and look at it when it stops pounding out. But look at how critical it is of itself. And the restriction, so you can really have a nice conversation with ChatGPT. And and I'll show you something else. Generate a bill for the work I have done. Yes. But anyway, there's lots of improvement suggestions that ChatGPT picked up on that Genesis didn't. But when I click on regenerate, then it'll satisfy both of them. In the meantime, generate a bill for the work I've been doing. See what it does there. Oh, can't. No. Okay. Sorry about that. All right. So I think that's anything else you want to see there, Jacob? Let me see if there's any other questions from anybody. I'm sorry, this questions panel doesn't seem to be working.
I see some questions from a Perry Smith.
Okay.
That's technical questions. How do we save the client data? Our system, your system, and is there a link to have the client populate this to save billable time?
Okay, those are all very good. So Estate-View is on the Amazon cloud. It uses a conventional programming structure where the data stays on your computer. So everything you've seen me do has been on my computer. I think the AI is momentarily on the cloud. Our platform, Estate-View, our company, has no access to anything I just did. It's all on my computer. It's all on my browser. So, and that's obviously important. As far as a client filling out the instant plan, what I do is I can go here, I can click on Add New Client, and it's going to be Jacob Weber. Is he married? Yeah, last time I checked. Say Mary Weber. And then I'll send him a blank form, and I'll send him our standard intake form. I've got detailed, standard, and calculator only. Most of our clients like standard. So I click on standard, I click on create new client, and then it's taking me there. And now I go to, let me see, how do I send this to the client? Click on client, export it. I'm trying to remember where the switch is. So client, PDF menu. Okay. I can, at this point, I can generate a customized PDF, download fillable PDF, and then I can email the client the PDF. They fill in the PDF on their own, on their own time. They don't have to be on my portal, and then I just scan the PDF and it feeds into StateView and loads onto the portal. But I also have the ability to send this to the client. See there, it says send portal link. So I click there, and I want the client to have the standard portal. I want it to be blank. Or maybe I've done some of the inputs and I want the client to fill out the rest. So then I'm going to send it to the client. So it's going to be, I'll send it to myself. And then I want their planner to get it too. So I'll send it to planner@abc.com. And I want to copy myself, click send. So now the client got an email. And the client clicks on the email, and they will be right here. They'll see their name, and they'll have a video that says, "Hi, please fill this in." So they'll fill it in page by page, and the items in yellow that they fill in fuel our calculators. So for planners who want to just do down and dirty planning, you just fill in the yellow. That's the only thing our calculators detect. But for people who want a more robust, and by the way, you can go here to settings and click on calculator only. And now the data points are only what the calculators would be fueled by. On the other hand, if you want a standard intake form, that's about a 12 to 14 page intake form. It's not terribly robust, but it's what most people would give you. Or I can go to a detailed intake form, and now it's going to be very robust. If you're a subscriber, you can also customize your intake form. So I can say, well, I like most of what Alan's got here, but I don't think we need to ask all of this. So for each of these items, I can say, on the children area, I'll keep all the inputs, or I only need the calculator inputs, or I'll customize the inputs. So what of this information do I want to ask for each child? So then you can develop your own macro, so to speak, with respect to that. So I think that answers those questions, didn't it?
I believe so.
Any other questions?
I think you answered, what kind of report can we give the client and what does it look like?
Okay, that's a good question. Go back up here to clients and go back to Alan and Marcia, click open client, click on results. So I showed you one of the spreadsheets. I'll show you another one of the spreadsheets. So I go back up here just to remind you. I can click on export to Excel. Then I click export and open that up. See where it comes up. I've got so many computer screens here. So now I've got their asset information, class by class and column by column, which they like to have. I show them their asset allocation by size. So this is in proportion to size now and on retirement age. It will eventually give them a robust personal financial statement. Haven't got that all programmed in yet. Then I've got my married couple module, which I showed you, and I can click on generate client letter, and that will create a robust letter that explains the estate tax system and what these planning steps were. It goes further and gives you options. I can click to pop out, and I have all these options as to the different things that I can show on the estate tax planning, changing them. But then I have client information in general with life insurance cost information estimates. I've got a family tree. I've got a family calendar with birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays. I've got their contact information. I've got their required minimum distribution report for each of their IRAs showing the charity with and without charity. I've got a Monte Carlo report showing them the possible rates of return based upon the allocation of stocks to bonds, and showing what this portfolio, what my IRA may turn into in the 36 years that it has. Median 102 million, bottom 10%, 47 million, top 10%, 213 million. To educate them on that. Then I've got the nest calculator I showed you. I've got how much does it save to make a large gift. I've got qualified personal residence trusts reports if they want to do those. Self-canceling installment note rates if they want to do a self-canceling installment note. Private annuity rates if they want to do an individual or separate private annuity for estate tax planning. Grant or retained annuity trusts. Other alternatives. For some reason it reloaded there. Had a little error. I'll send that to my programmers to ask them why. Go back here, it'll pick up where it was. Where was I? I was there, and clicked on results. So alternatives, then it'll write me a letter talking, it's a state planning letter that it does a first draft of. There's a module where I can pick which paragraphs I want on the letter. Then there's the points of discussion. Sorry, I don't know why it's reloading. The programmers were in it this morning, so that might be the reason. So then I've got that. Then the life insurance. And if I click on all results together, then it takes all of those results and puts them all together. So I want to thank everybody for joining us for this webinar. And the aftermath of the webinar, we intended to go an hour, and 29 brave souls are still on here with us. Appreciate it very much. If any of you want a free trial on EstateView, just email me, gassman@gassmanpa.com, and we'll be glad to send that to you. My email address is right there at the bottom. Jacob, any words of wisdom here?
Well, it was great being here. That's what I can say. It was definitely fun, and my word of wisdom would be get EstateView.
Okay, thank you very much, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.
Take care.